So the topic for today is simplifying complex fractions. Complex fractions are fractions that have another fraction in the numerator, denominator, or both. And so here are some examples of complex fractions. You can see in this fraction, there's two fractions in the numerator, there's a fraction in the denominator. Over here, there's no fraction in the numerator, but there are two fractions in the denominator. If you look here, this doesn't look like a complex fraction when you look at it because you don't see a fraction in a fraction, but it is when we simplify this. And I'm going to show you how we simplify this. Remember what the negative exponent means? The negative exponent means move that value to the other side of the fraction bar. Remember that? So if we had x to the negative 1, this is 1 over x. That was negative exponents. So here's the deal. It isn't that we move this x down here and this x up here, because it doesn't work like that. What this is we have to make a fraction out of each term. So when we simplify this, this is actually 1 over x minus 1 over y. Draw the fraction bar. This is 1 over x squared minus 1 over y squared. But instead of writing it like that, which is an enormous problem, it's written simpler by writing it like this. But what we have to know is when we go to simplify this, we want to write it with fractions. All right? There are two methods to do this. We are only going to learn the first method because I have found that when I try to cover both methods, it just causes confusion and you guys tend to put half of one method with half of another and end up with a mess. So we're going to cover one way to do this. If we have some extra time at the end, I may show you the other way as well. So simplify the numerator and denominator separately. Then divide by multiplying by the reciprocal. So what we're going to do, and usually when I do this, I use a ruler. All right? What I need to do first is simplify the numerator by itself, simplify the denominator by itself. So here I've got just the numerator. In that numerator, I need a common denominator. What would be a good common denominator for that numerator? How about 12? Yeah, all right? So with this fraction, in order to make the denominator 12, multiply by 2. Do the same thing on top. So now we have a common denominator of 12. Subtract across the numerator. 7 minus 2 is 5. Okay? We have simplified the numerator into one fraction. Now we've got to do the same thing with the denominator. Okay? Remember, 2 is the same as 2 over 1. And I find if you put the 1 there to make it a fraction, you're less likely to make mistakes. Now, what would we use as a common denominator? How about 9? So here, I need to multiply my denominator by 9 and my numerator by 9. So now I have a common denominator of 9. And in my numerator, I have 18 plus 4 is 22. So here's what I have. This is my complex fraction. Now, this fraction bar means the same thing as division. All right? So what we're going to do is divide. And remember the process for dividing fractions? We're going to multiply and flip. All right? So take that first fraction, that top fraction. We have 5 over 12 times, flip this one upside down. So this is 9 over 22. And now we can cancel if possible. And I have 9 and 12. 3 goes into 9 3 times. 3 goes into 12 4 times. Multiply across my numerator. 5 times 3 is 15. Across my denominator, 4 times 22 is 88. And there we are. All right, that's simplifying a complex fraction. Now that was an easy one because it had all numbers. We have to do some examples that are going to have x's and y's in them. So let's go to our next example. And in our next example, notice that one of the things we have to do first is write this with fractions instead of negative exponents. So remember how I said this would work. X to the negative 1 is 1 over x. Y to the negative 1 is 1 over y. X to the negative 2 is 1 over x squared. And y to the negative 2 is 1 over y squared. Okay, now, the next step, we simplify the numerator and denominator separately. So I'm going to cover up the denominator so it doesn't confuse me. In the numerator, I have to find a lowest common denominator. That would be xy. Okay, so this fraction needs a y on the bottom and a y on top. And this fraction needs an x on the bottom and an x on top. So in my next step, I have a common denominator of xy. My numerator, y minus x. Okay, cover up the numerator and just work with the denominator. All right, now when I look at my two fractions, I see that my lowest common denominator is x squared, y squared. So this fraction, whoops, I'm going to use the red so we can see what we're doing here. Multiplied by y squared on the bottom and on the top. So I have x squared, y squared on the bottom. Here, multiplied by x squared on the bottom and on the top. Okay? Now I have one fraction. The denominator is x squared, y squared. The numerator is y squared minus x squared. Okay? Now that I've simplified the numerator and denominator separately, I can uncover them. Now recall that this fraction bar here in the middle means division. So what I'm going to do is multiply by the reciprocal. So write out that first fraction. This is y minus x over xy times, flip this one upside down. All right, so x squared, y squared goes to the top. Now, here's what's going to happen. When I put this down here, the y squared minus x squared, I'm going to want to factor it anyway to see if it'll cancel. So let's go ahead and factor it. Y squared minus x squared is the difference of two squareds. So this is y plus x, y minus x. Okay, now I'm going to look for anything I can cancel. So first of all, I've got a y minus x up here and down here. That cancels. All right, I've got an x here and an x squared up here. I can take 1 away from here. I've got a y and a y squared, so take 1 away from here. And what I'm left with is xy in the numerator and y plus x in the denominator. All right, let's try another one. In this example, we don't even have any fractions in the numerator, which makes this kind of easy for us because our very first step is to simplify the numerator and denominator, so we can just copy over our x. But I'm going to cover up my numerator because I'm just going to work with the denominator, and I need to add these together. So I need a common denominator, which would be xy. So multiply the bottom and the top by a y, and over here the bottom and the top by an x. So now I have a common denominator of xy, and my numerator is y plus x. Okay, now I can uncover. Remember that this fraction bar means division. So we're going to multiply and flip. So remember, my top here is just an x. Make it a fraction so that you don't get confused by what is in the numerator and what's in the denominator. Now I'm just going to change this to multiply, and I'm going to flip this one upside down. So xy comes to the top, and on the bottom I have y plus x. Now when I look at this, there's nothing that I can cancel at all. So I'm just going to multiply across the numerator and denominator. So my numerator is x squared y. My denominator is y plus x. Now some of the ones you're going to have on your homework are going to be this easy to get started. You will find that as you work through the problems more towards the end, that they are going to get more difficult. Like this. So first thing I'm going to do, cover up my denominator, and I'm just going to work with my numerator. All right, first thing I've got to figure out is what is a good lowest common denominator. Now I'm going to start writing them out because they're not so easy. There's more stuff in them. Now, I need a 3 and an x, but over here I also have an x plus 2. So my lowest common denominator is 3x, x plus 2. So in my first fraction, I'm going to need an x plus 2. So multiply the bottom by x plus 2, multiply the top by x plus 2. When I go over here to this fraction, I need a 3x. So I'm going to put this in parentheses and multiply by 3x. I'm going to do the same thing on top. All right, now I have a common denominator, which is 3x, x plus 2. And all I want to do is add across, or in this case, subtract across my numerator. So here I've got x plus 2. Then I'm going to subtract 12x. I can simplify that some more on my next step. That's okay. Cover up my numerator. We're going to do the same thing with the denominator. We don't need to use the same LCD we just used. We can have a completely different LCD in the denominator. So here, my LCD, I need an x plus 2 and an x. So my LCD is x, x plus 2. Now in my first fraction, I need an x. So put it in parentheses, multiply by an x, also multiply by an x in the numerator. In this fraction, I need an x plus 2. So multiply by an x plus 2. Do the same thing in the numerator. Okay, now I have a common denominator, which is x, x plus 2. My numerator, here I've got x squared. Here I've got plus x plus 2. Okay, so now I've simplified the numerator and denominator, and I'm going to change this division. Let's put a little arrow in here. This is division. We're going to change it to multiplying by the reciprocal. So take the first fraction, or the top fraction. Let me simplify this. X minus 12x is negative 11x plus 2. And then this is over 3x, x plus 2. Change this to multiply. We're going to flip this one upside down. So now on the top we have x, x plus 2. On the bottom we have x squared plus x plus 2. Now if this factors, we want to factor it. But in order to factor it, I need something that multiplies to 2 and adds to 1. And there isn't anything. So this isn't going to factor, so I'm just going to write it as x squared plus x plus 2. And now I'm going to look and see what I can cancel. I can cancel this x plus 2 with this one. And I've got this x with this one. And that's all I can cancel. So let me put together what I have left. In the numerator, I have negative 11x plus 2. In the denominator, 3 times x squared plus x plus 2. And you can distribute it